Alan, great to have you on the program with us. What do you know about this latest attack?
We know several things about it. One, the fact that the World Bank cut off its network connection with the IMF says that the infection was deep and broad, and they don't know exactly how deep or how broad because you only cut off the connection when you're not sure. We have a good idea that this is part of a wave of economic espionage. It's actually putting additional pressure on the U.S. economy because the people who have access to early data about where IMF money is going and what it's going to be doing have an unfair advantage in all the competition. So that part we know, that there's a lot of secrecy around the attacks. People don't like to give up data about how they were done.
But do we know if this is a government? Is this government sponsored?
This is economic espionage. So the question is economic espionage done by governments? In the Chinese case, the People's Liberation Army actually has the economic mission as well as the military mission. So when you see economic espionage out of China, it in fact is the government, but there's economic espionage coming out of corporations around the world. So it's not clear who this is.
You mean company? Wait, let me just get this straight. Companies are also committing economic espionage is what you're saying?
Companies are committing on a large scale, as are other governments. Many governments are using the same techniques that they're using for military espionage to learn enough to get an advantage in an economic transaction that they're undertaking.
But Alan, do we know if you know all these latest attacks? You know, we've heard about on the IMF and about Sony and about Citigroup. I mean, do we know if these are all the same groups or are they all different groups?
They're four groups. There are two espionage groups. Two espionage groups, one the military espionage and one the economic espionage. Then there's the organized crime groups, and then there are the hacktivists. So Sony is the hacktivist group, somebody who's just mad about something and wants to make a statement. This IMF data, because it's deep and broad, is clearly in the economic espionage group. It probably doesn't have anything to do with military espionage the way the attack on the Lockheed's work on the F-35 strike fighter did.
Your firm works with a lot of agencies, including the Department of Defense. And I would think that if we ever saw a headline that the Pentagon was hacked, that would be extremely disturbing for Americans here. I mean, what is going on to try to protect against that?
You actually saw that headline a couple of years ago when the Secretary of Defense's computers were hacked. So it's happening, but they keep such a lid on it that you don't get a big news coverage on it. So you saw little headlines. But what you are seeing is a major change in the federal government's view of cybersecurity. It used to be kind of the laughingstock of the security world. The financial institutions were much better off. But just in the last few months, there's been an awakening to new types of security focus that wasn't there for a long time. So we're much more hopeful now than we were a few months ago that the federal government will actually lead by example. And the Department of Defense is in the front along with parts of the Department of State.
You mean that it used to be considered kind of a joke?
Used to be enough of a joke that around the Pentagon you'd be looking for a document and someone would say, look, if you can't find it, call the Chinese. They probably have it.
No.
It wasn't funny.
No, not at all. But Alan, now you are saying, though, that there's a palpable shift then. So what is that manifested into?
It used to be you'd hire some expert to come in and tell you how good your security is once a year or once a quarter. Now they've completely transformed the way they're looking at security to monitor the traffic and to monitor the systems every minute of every day. So when you get in the morning, you know if there's any problem and you get it fixed right away. It used to be months and sometimes years before federal agencies would fix known errors. They're changing that. It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but at least there's a move to act in a responsible way with regard to cybersecurity, and it feels a little better than it did a few months ago. All
right. And Alan, just quickly, do we know if any of this stolen data has been used yet, or has it shown up at all?
We almost never know. In the military case, we know when it's used when we find our military weapons systems showing up in other people's inventory. But in the economic case, it's all below the radar. So you'll never actually see when a negotiator knows something he shouldn't know. You'll just know that he won the competition and a U.S. firm didn't.
I see. Alan, thank you. Really appreciate your time.